Morning, Dan and Amy. We're going to talk to Admiral Phil Anselmo, who has endorsed Donald Trump, in just a minute. But, Amy, this story is very interesting. You'll note yesterday the Department of Justice announced it's dismissing all charges against former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a Republican.
Oh, really?
Right? This is after the Supreme Court overturned his corruption convictions in June because there needed to be a quo for the quid. In other words, the gifts that he received, there was no official act that could be tied directly to the gifts. He took these gifts and then he did something because he received these gifts. There was no connection there, so there was no quid pro quo. So that statute is unconstitutional. The whole kind of taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts is a problem. It kind of creates that political ruling class mentality. So even if it's legal, it doesn't necessarily make it appropriate. But Jim Garrity in National Review Online, who's done a lot of great reporting on this throughout the course of the case, the McDonnell case, and Virginia specifically, notes that in 2005, another governor in Virginia accepted an $18,000 Caribbean vacation to Mystique, a private island playground for rock stars and royalty, which I'm sure you've been to.
Oh, yeah. It was Tim Kaine, right?
In a single term, that governor,
Yeah.
Tim Kaine, received $187,000 in gifts and travel, Redskin tickets, cases of wine, other expensive demonstrations of generosity. So I just, it's just interesting to note.
Because of state law, isn't it legal?
It's legal,
but it doesn't mean it's right.
And this idea of like squeaky clean Tim Kaine,
the suburban boring politician.
I mean, it's just this is something that should be asked, maybe brought up in a vice presidential debate, because I think Mike Pence may be able to provide some contrast to how he operated as governor of Indiana as compared to how Tim Kaine operated with the donor class as governor of Virginia. Just an interesting side note. But let's turn our attention now to qualification to be commander-in-chief. Who has the judgment and the temperament and the base of knowledge to rebuild our military, to make sure we're prepared for the 21st century challenges this country faces? Well, to help us answer that question, we're happy to be joined by Admiral Phil Anselmo. Admiral Anselmo, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, glad to be here. Thank you.
What was the basis of your decision to endorse Donald Trump to be commander-in-chief?
Well, I stood on the sidelines, as most flag and general officers do, and have watched this election campaign unfold. And, of course, we've assessed that the military is certainly on the backside of the power curve, expanding threats around the globe. And, of course, the actions of Secretary Clinton in handling classified material and continuing to lie about it, of course, the pay for play. Couldn't stand on the sidelines any longer. Had to stand up and throw my support to Mr. Trump.
So who reached out to you to be one of the 88 former military leaders to sign the letter? Did you meet with Donald Trump?
I got an email from an old shipmate saying he was putting it together and asked me if I would sign up, and I said I would.
And so kind of building on the forum this week that covers, and Trump's speech on Wednesday morning in Philadelphia that covers some of what you were just referencing. Talk about Putin here. This is a sticking point for me with Trump. What is your opinion? Does Vlad Putin deserve bouquets or brickbats from the Republican nominee for president of the United States?
Well, I think you have to thread a thin line here. I think Mr. Trump's doing the right thing. You don't want to be derogatory towards any of these leaders, how radical they are. But you do want to kind of walk a thin line, making sure that you keep all doors open, looking into the future in terms of negotiations and positions that you may have to develop once you're in control and have the authority to do something.
But do you think his praise for Vladimir Putin is just a little off or maybe a little bit too much?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think the press is exaggerating it. I think it's about the right temperament. I think actually the whole event, discussion of it, and concerns expressed by some in the media, I think is a little far-fetched.
the kind of rank order of priority in terms of national security. Donald Trump spent a lot of time on Wednesday morning in that speech in Philadelphia detailing where the various branches of the U.S. military currently find themselves in terms of preparedness and resources. Give us your assessment of his assessment, particularly the Navy, seeing your decades of service there.
Sure.
Is he right about the kind of the dangerous underpreparedness of many of the branches of the military?
Well, he's right about that. I mean, we're taking spare parts out of museums now to keep frontline airplanes flying. I'll take you back to the Reagan administration. He did quite a great buildup in preparation for the Cold War and then, of course, winning it. Mr. Trump has taken what I would call a moderate but proper increase in readiness that's necessary for the armed forces. In the Navy's case, he's appropriately trying to get us back up to the level of number of ships that we need to be able to provide the world coverage across all these hotspots, which include now the South China Sea, the Mediterranean, the Arabian Sea, etc. It's a worldwide problem. Our ship levels currently are down at the levels of 1915. We've not seen anything like that for over 100 years.
And you're confident that Donald Trump, if he does become president, he'll bulk up the military and the sequester?
Yes, I'm very confident of that. I don't think he has any options, frankly. He sees the danger out there. He recognizes, and he's been advised by a lot of long-time experienced military and professional civilians. He's got a very good senior security team talking to him. They've all come to the same conclusion that we need to get ourselves back on a good footing in terms of military.
Sticking to the Navy specifically, we've had a rather embarrassing moment with those naval shipmen who were taken hostage by the Iranians not so long ago. We've got the rolling problem with keeping the South China Sea trade routes open, and that's largely a naval responsibility. Is part of your support for Trump the result of the policies of the current President of the United States?
I would say that is one of the reasons that I come down on the side of Mr. Trump. The Secretary Clinton reset button with Russia, withdrawing all the troops from Iraq precipitously, not recognizing Boko Haram as a terrorist organization. Instead of taking the recommendations of the military in Libya, where we had a peaceful negotiation brokered with Gaddafi, Secretary Clinton went ahead and decided to create another vacuum with more terror. These are big problems. I mean, you can see the Iranian saber rattling every day with their high-speed craft running passes at our ships as we come through the Straits of Hormuz. For those of us that have done that before, we've seen that once before. And you have to be serious. And I think this administration and Secretary Clinton's policies have precipitated a very, very dangerous world.
Admiral, what do you think of the possibility Donald Trump said once ISIS is defeated that he wants to take their oil?
I think what we're talking about here, and I know we've heard a number of phrases quoted, but one of the things that I think he was looking at is when we ran the campaign in Iraq, you realize there's the Kurds, the Shia, and the Sunni. And, of course, there's been disagreements amongst the three factions. We did not allow U.S. industrial oil companies to come in and help set up, run, and organize the oil refineries and the oil drilling in Iraq. In fact, we kept them out of it. Had we left them there and allowed them to run the system for the Iraqis, we could have also overseen the equal distribution of the assets amongst the three factions, which would have led to even a more peaceful resolution of Iraq. So when he says that, take the oil, I think he's alluding to what I just said.
All right. He is Admiral Phil Anselmo, one of the decorated military veterans supporting Donald Trump for president. Admiral Anselmo, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Amy.
And have a great weekend. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.